The night of Halloween enveloped us like a thick fog, laden with the promise of mischief and mystery. I found myself at Alex's house, a hub of excitement, where the air was filled with nervous laughter and the sweet scent of candy corn. As my friends gathered, the flickering light of candles cast eerie shadows across the walls, making the atmosphere just the right blend of spooky and festive. We were all wearing costumes, of course, each one more extravagant than the last, but it was the stories that truly fueled our excitement. Did you guys hear about the old cemetery down by Maple Street? Samantha asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She was dressed as a witch, complete with a tall, pointed hat and a broomstick that looked like it could actually fly. I heard it's haunted by the ghost of a musician who died tragically years ago. Ryan, leaning against the wall with a cocky smirk, rolled his eyes. Come on, Sam. You know that's just a bunch of urban legends. It's Halloween. Everyone's trying to scare each other with tall tales. There's no such thing as ghosts. Yeah, but what if there is? I chimed in, trying to gauge the group's interest. I mean, wouldn't it be fun to actually spend the night in a haunted place? It would be the ultimate thrill. Samantha's eyes lit up. You're right. Let's do it. Let's spend the night in the cemetery. Just the three of us. It'll be like a sleepover, but with a spooky twist. No way. Count me out, Ryan protested, shaking his head vigorously. I'm not spending 1 minute in a graveyard. What if we get chased by zombies or something? Zombies? Please, Ryan, I laughed, giving him a playful nudge. It's probably just a bunch of old tombstones and some bats. It'll be fun, I promise. Fine, he sighed dramatically, rolling his eyes. But if we get haunted, I'm blaming you too. With that, we made our way out of Alex's house, stepping into the crisp night air. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an otherworldly glow on our surroundings. The streets were quiet, the only sounds being our footsteps crunching on fallen leaves and the occasional rustle of branches swaying in the breeze. As we walked, we began exchanging stories about the supernatural. I could feel the tension rising in the air as Samantha recounted a tale about a couple who had gone missing after visiting the cemetery. They say their spirits still wander the grounds, searching for a way back home, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Okay, now you're just trying to scare us, Ryan said, though I could see the slight tremor in his hands. You know those stories are just made up, right? Maybe it's made up, but what if it isn't? I countered, my heart racing with excitement and fear. What if we actually encounter something? Wouldn't that be the ultimate Halloween story? Or the last story we'll ever tell? Ryan muttered under his breath, but I could see a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Deep down, I knew he was intrigued, despite his bravado. As we approached the cemetery gates, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew still, and an unsettling silence settled over us. The wrought iron gate creaked ominously as we pushed it open, the sound echoing into the night. The cemetery stretched out before us, an expanse of shadowy graves and ancient trees, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Welcome to the graveyard, I joked nervously, trying to lighten the mood. Home sweet home. Samantha laughed, though it was a bit strained. This is it. Let's explore. We walked further into the cemetery, the moonlight illuminating the elaborate headstones that dotted the landscape. I took out my phone, eager to capture the moment, but as I pressed the button, my screen flickered and then went dark. What the? My battery is dead, I exclaimed, shaking the device in disbelief. Seriously? You had to pick now to let your phone die? Ryan teased, though I could hear the edge of anxiety creeping into his voice. What are we going to do without any light? Relax, we've got each other, Samantha replied, her tone more confident than she felt. And look, the moon is bright enough to see. Just as she said that, a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down my spine. I glanced at the shadows that danced under the moonlight, feeling an odd sense of unease creeping in. This place feels different, I murmured, glancing around. Different how? Ryan asked, crossing his arms defensively. I don't know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It just feels like We're being watched. Don't be ridiculous, Alex scoffed, trying to keep the mood light as he stepped forward to examine a weathered tombstone. It's just a bunch of rocks and dirt. Nothing to be afraid of. But as we continued deeper into the cemetery, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, almost like they were alive, watching our every move. I glanced at Samantha, who was now staring intently at a particularly old headstone, her expression shifting from playful to serious. "Look at this one," she said, brushing her fingers over the inscription. "It's so old. I wonder what the story behind it is." As she touched the stone, a low sound began to drift through the cemetery. It was soft at first, like the distant echo of a piano playing a haunting melody. I exchanged glances with Ryan and Alex, their eyes wide with confusion. "Do you guys hear that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Hear what?" Ryan replied, though his eyes were darting around, searching for the source of the sound. "The music," I insisted, straining my ears to catch the delicate notes that seemed to float through the air. It was almost melancholic, weaving through the darkness like a whisper from the past. Samantha's expression shifted again, and she took a step closer to the sound, drawn in by its allure. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her eyes glimmering with a strange light. "Beautiful? It sounds creepy," Ryan exclaimed, his voice rising in pitch. "We should get out of here." But before we could turn back, the melody grew stronger, wrapping around us like an invisible thread. It was mesmerizing in a way that made me feel both enchanted and terrified. "What is this?" I wondered aloud, scanning the area for any sign of the source. "I think it's coming from over there." Samantha pointed toward a cluster of trees at the far end of the cemetery. "Let's check it out." "Are you crazy?" Ryan protested. "We shouldn't wander off like that." But before he could voice any further objections, Samantha had already started walking toward the sound. I felt an inexplicable pull toward her, as if some unseen force, was urging me to follow. I glanced back at Ryan, who looked torn between fear and curiosity. "Come on, Ryan," I coaxed, nudging him forward. "It'll be fine. Just stay close." As we made our way through the graves, the music enveloped us, each note resonating with an eerie beauty that sent chills down my spine. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, and I felt an overwhelming sense of unease creeping in. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I could almost hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. When we finally reached the trees, the music seemed to swell, filling the air with an intensity that was almost palpable. I turned to Samantha, who had stopped, her eyes wide with wonder. "This is incredible," she whispered, captivated by the sound. But just as I began to feel the same fascination, a chill ran down my spine, snapping me back to reality. "We shouldn't be here," I said, my voice shaky. "This feels wrong." Alex, who had remained quiet, suddenly pulled out his phone. "Let me film this. This is going to be epic for my vlog." He attempted to record the scene, but as he pressed the button, the screen flickered once more and then went black. "What the hell?" he cursed, shaking the phone in frustration. "Seriously?" Ryan exclaimed. "What are the odds that both of our phones die at the same time?" "Maybe it's a sign," I said uneasily, eyeing the shadows that seemed to grow thicker around us. "We should leave." Just as I turned to suggest we head back, the music shifted. It transformed from a gentle melody to something darker, more insistent, and in that moment, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. The night air grew heavy, and the feeling of being watched intensified. "Guys, I really think we should go," I urged, my voice rising. "This isn't right." But before anyone could respond, the shadows around us seemed to pulse, and I caught a glimpse of something moving in the darkness. It was fleeting, just a flicker, but enough to send my heart racing. "Did you see that?" I gasped, turning to the others. "What are you talking about?" Alex asked, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the area. "Something moved," I insisted, my voice trembling. "I swear I saw it." Ryan laughed nervously, trying to ease the tension. "It's just our imaginations." The air was thick with anticipation as we stepped through the wrought iron gates of the cemetery, the faint fog swirling around our ankles like ghostly fingers. I could feel the chill of the night creeping into my bones, but I tried to shake it off. I wanted to appear brave, especially in front of Samantha. She had always been the fearless one, the one who dared us to face our fears. "Are we really doing this?" Ryan asked, his voice wavering slightly. He was trying to keep the mood light, but I could hear the tremor beneath his bravado. "Come on, Ryan. It's just a cemetery," I replied, attempting to sound more confident than I felt. I glanced at Samantha, who was already striding ahead, her silhouette framed by the silver light of the moon. She looked back at us with a grin that sent a shiver down my spine. "Let's see who can last the longest without screaming," she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Easy for you to say. You've done this before," Ryan shot back, but he followed her, albeit hesitantly. As we walked deeper into the cemetery, the crunch of gravel beneath our feet echoed in the stillness of the night. The tombstones loomed like sentinels, their weathered faces telling stories of lives long gone. A sudden breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and I felt a tingle of apprehension race through me. "Have you guys heard the stories about this place?" I asked, hoping to distract myself. "They say the spirits of those who died tragically still roam these grounds." "Yeah, and they say if you listen closely, you can hear them whispering at night," Samantha chimed in, her voice low and eerie, just the way I liked it. "Especially around the old chapel." Ryan rolled his eyes. "You two are just trying to scare me. It's all urban legends, right? Just like the one about the musician who died here and lures people in with his music." "Exactly," I replied, trying to keep the mood light. "You should be more worried about the ghosts of the people who died in the car accidents. They're the ones who might actually come after you." "Very funny," he said, but I could see him looking around nervously, the shadows playing tricks on his imagination. We finally arrived at a clearing in the cemetery, where an ancient oak tree stood tall, its gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. It was here that we decided to pause. I pulled out my phone to film, wanting to capture the atmosphere, the thrill of the moment. But as I hit the record button, the screen flickered and went dark. "What the?" I muttered, pressing the button again. Nothing. The battery was dead. "Great timing," Ryan said, his voice suddenly serious. "Now we really are in the dark." "Don't be such a baby," Samantha said, though I could see the apprehension in her eyes. "We're fine. Let's just explore a little." As we wandered further, the air grew heavier, and I noticed a faint melody floating through the air, soft and melancholic. It was almost beautiful, yet unsettling, like a lullaby sung by a voice long forgotten. "Do you guys hear that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Hear what?" Ryan squinted into the darkness, his brow furrowed. "The music," I replied, straining to listen. "It sounds like a piano?" Samantha tilted her head, as if trying to catch the tune. "Yeah, I hear it too. It's coming from somewhere over there." She pointed towards a cluster of gravestones, their shapes barely visible in the moonlight. "Maybe it's just the wind," Ryan suggested, but even he didn't sound convinced. "No way," Samantha said, her eyes glinting with excitement. "I think it's real. Let's check it out." As we moved toward the source of the sound, I felt a chill run down my spine. The closer we got, the more intense the melody became, wrapping around us like an invisible shroud. It was both inviting and terrifying. "What if it's a trap?" Ryan whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "Like in those horror movies?" "Relax," I said, trying to be the voice of reason. "It's just a song. Maybe someone is playing it on a radio or something." But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. This felt different, too pure, too haunting. Samantha stepped closer to a particularly ornate gravestone, her fingers gently brushing over the cold marble. "Look at this one," she said softly, her breath visible in the cool air. "It's so old." As her fingers made contact, the melody swelled, transforming into a rich, vibrant sound that filled the air. My heart raced, and I glanced at Ryan, whose eyes were wide with fear. Guys? This is getting kind of creepy," he stammered, backing away slightly. "Stop being such a wuss." "Ryan," Samantha shot back, though her voice was trembling slightly too. "It's just music." But as she continued to touch the gravestone, a sudden wave of cold washed over me. I shivered uncontrollably, and the shadows around us seemed to deepen, swirling with a life of their own. "Do you see that?" I gasped, pointing toward the far end of the cemetery. There, just beyond the trees, a figure flickered in and out of view, almost like a mirage. Samantha's gaze followed mine, but her face paled. "What is that?" she whispered, her bravado fading. I don't know," I stammered, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Maybe it's just a trick of the light, but deep down I felt that it was more than that. The figure seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the music, and the longer we stood there, the more I was convinced it was watching us. "Let's get out of here," Ryan urged, his voice rising in panic. "This isn't funny anymore." "No, wait," Samantha said, her eyes locked on the figure. "I have to see it." Before I could stop her, she took a step forward, drawn to the shadow like a moth to a flame. I reached out to grab her arm, but it was too late. The music crescendoed, and the figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving a thick silence in its wake. "What just happened?" I asked, my voice shaking. Samantha stepped back, her face pale. I don't know. I thought I saw something." "Something? You mean someone?" Ryan exclaimed, his voice laced with fear. "What if that was a ghost? What if we're not alone here?" "I thought you said it was all just urban legends," I shot back, trying to maintain my composure. "I didn't mean it," he shouted, his voice echoing through the cemetery. "I just wanted to lighten the mood." "This is not the time for that," I said, my heart racing. The music had stopped, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake, and I felt like we were being watched. Samantha turned to me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We need to go. Now." But just as we began to retreat, the music returned, this time more intense and resonant, vibrating through the ground beneath our feet. Felt like it was alive, thrumming with energy. "Make it stop," Ryan yelled, covering his ears. "I can't," Samantha shouted back, her voice filled with desperation. "It's like it's coming from everywhere." I felt a strange pull, like the very essence of the music was wrapping around me, urging me to listen, to dance. "No," I shouted, shaking my head. "We have to fight it." But even as I said it, I could feel the melody tugging at my limbs, enticing me to move. The shadows around us seemed to shift and sway as if dancing to the rhythm of the haunting tune. "Don't give in," I cried out, grabbing Samantha's arm. "We need to stick together." But the music was relentless, each note echoing in my mind like a siren's call. In the back of my mind, I could hear the laughter of children, the whispers of those long gone, and it filled me with a terror I had never known. "Stay strong," I urged, but even I could feel my resolve wavering as the shadows began to close in around us. In that moment, I realized the truth. The music wasn't just a sound. It was a force, an entity that wanted to claim us, to weave us into its eternal tapestry. And as I looked into Samantha's eyes, I knew we had to find a way to break the spell before it was too late. As we wandered deeper into the cemetery, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt heavier, thick with an unsettling energy that prickled my skin. I could feel my heart racing as I glanced at my friends, Samantha, Ryan, and Alex, each of us trying to maintain a facade of bravery while the tension hung thick in the air like a fog. "Did you guys hear that?" I said, breaking the silence that had settled over us. A faint melody drifted through the air, soft yet haunting, like a lullaby sung by the wind itself. "Probably just some kids messing around," Ryan replied, trying to sound nonchalant. He was always good at keeping the mood light, but even he couldn't hide the edge of nervousness in his voice. "No way. That's way too eerie for kids," Alex shot back, rolling his eyes. "It's probably just some old pipes or something. Seriously, we need to stop letting our imaginations run wild." As he spoke, his bravado seemed more like a shield against the creeping dread. Samantha, however, stood still, her eyes focused on something in the distance. "It sounds beautiful," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "like something calling to us." "Calling to us?" Are you serious? I laughed nervously, but inside, I felt a chill. What if it's a siren's song, luring us to our doom? Stop it, Alex. Samantha shot back, her tone sharper now. This is serious. You don't know what's out here. I could see Alex's bravado wavering. It's just a stupid song, okay? Let's keep moving, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. As we continued, the melody seemed to grow louder, more insistent. My heart raced, and I felt an inexplicable pull toward the source of the sound. Guys, do you feel that? I asked, glancing back at Ryan and Samantha. They were both looking at each other, their faces pale. Yeah, it's like, I can't shake the feeling that we need to follow it, Ryan admitted, his voice tense. But that's crazy, right? Crazy or not, I'm just curious. It might be a prank or something, Alex replied, but his bravado was slipping. I could see it in the way his eyes darted around, scanning the shadows that danced beneath the moonlight. Samantha took a cautious step forward, her gaze locked on a weathered gravestone ahead. Let's just check it out. What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, I muttered under my breath, but I followed her anyway. As we approached the gravestone, the music enveloped us, wrapping around us like a shroud. I felt an intense pressure in my chest, as if the melody were squeezing my heart. This is unsettling, I said, my voice shaky. Samantha reached out to touch the gravestone, and the moment her fingers made contact, the music intensified, swelling into a full-bodied sound that resonated through the ground beneath us. I felt a shiver run down my spine, and I instinctively took a step back. Whoa, what just happened? Ryan exclaimed, his eyes wide. Did you see that? No, what? I asked, my heart pounding. Samantha's face had gone pale, her eyes wide with fear. I saw something, she stammered. A figure. It was standing right there, in the shadows. Are you sure it wasn't just your imagination? Alex asked, his skepticism returning. But even he looked uneasy now, glancing around as if expecting to see the figure emerge from the darkness. I know what I saw, Samantha insisted, her voice rising. It was like a ghost or something. Okay, let's not freak out, Ryan said, trying to keep the peace. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. We're in a graveyard at night, after all. But as the music swelled, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The shadows seemed to shift, elongating and twisting in ways that felt unnatural. We should get out of here, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Just a bit longer, Samantha urged, her eyes locked on the gravestone. We need to understand what's happening. Suddenly, the melody shifted, morphing into a sorrowful lament that echoed through the air. It was as if the very ground beneath us was mourning. I felt a chill seep into my bones, and I could see Ryan's face pale as he stepped back, clearly unsettled. Guys, this isn't right, he said, his voice trembling. We should leave. Now. But before we could turn away, the shadows around us began to shift in a more pronounced manner. They stretched and curled, almost as if they were reaching out toward us. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me, and I instinctively grabbed Samantha's arm. Do you see that? I asked, my voice urgent. What? She replied, her eyes darting around. The shadows. They're moving. I don't know, she stammered, clearly torn between fear and fascination. Guys, we need to go, Ryan shouted, his voice rising above the mournful music. But just as he spoke, a loud crack echoed through the air, and I felt the ground tremble beneath our feet. What the hell was that? Alex exclaimed, his bravado shattered. I don't know, but we can't stay here, I urged, pulling Samantha and Ryan back as the shadows seemed to draw closer. Wait, Samantha yelled, trying to break free from my grip. We can't leave now. We need to figure this out. Are you insane? I replied, panic rising in my chest. This place is cursed or something. But before I could say anything more, the music reached a crescendo, a haunting blend of sorrow and despair that reverberated through my very soul. The shadows swirled around us, and I felt an invisible force pulling me toward the gravestone, as if the melody had a will of its own. "Help!" Samantha cried out, her eyes wide with terror. "I can't move." "Neither can I," Ryan shouted, desperately trying to pull away from the unseen grasp. "Fight it!" I yelled, but my own body felt heavy, like I was being dragged into a dream that I couldn't escape. Suddenly, I remembered the old stories about the cemetery, how it was said to be haunted by the spirits of those who had died too young, their souls trapped, never able to find peace. "We need to break the cycle," I shouted, trying to rally us. "Break what cycle?" Alex asked, panic evident in his voice. "The music. It must be connected to the spirits," I said, my mind racing. "If we can find out what it wants, maybe we can free ourselves." As if in response to my words, the shadows around us began to pulse, and the music shifted once more, becoming a chilling echo of our own fears. In that moment, I felt a surge of determination. "We can't let it take us," I said, my voice firm. "We need to confront it. Together, together," Samantha echoed, her voice trembling but resolute. But as we stood there, the shadows loomed larger, their presence suffocating. I could see Alex's fear reflecting back at me, his bravado completely stripped away. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We face it," I declared, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. "We find a way to turn this around." But as the music crescendoed, I realized that we were standing on the precipice of something far darker than we could have ever imagined. The shadows were closing in, and the melody was no longer just a song. It was a warning, a siren call that promised only despair. And as I looked into my friend's eyes, I knew that we were in a fight for our lives, haunted by the past and gripped by the present. "Let's go," I said, my voice breaking through the fear. "For Alex, for all of us, we have to find the truth." And with that, we took a collective breath, ready to face whatever lay ahead, though the haunting melody echoed ominously around us, promising that the night was far from over. The air was thick with unease as we wandered deeper into the cemetery, our footsteps echoing softly against the cracked pavement. Shadows stretched out before us, elongated and twisting in the pale moonlight, creating an atmosphere that felt almost alive. My heart raced, and each beat seemed to synchronize with the haunting melody that floated through the stillness, wrapping around us like a shroud. "Alex," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Where the hell are you?" Panic crept into my tone as my mind began to race with thoughts of what could have happened to him. Just moments ago, he had been right next to us, his laughter ringing out as he made fun of the ghost stories we had been sharing. But now it was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. "Maybe he's just messing with us," Ryan said, his eyes darting around, searching the darkness. He tried to maintain a brave face, but I could see the worry etched across his features. "You know how he is, always trying to scare us." "No," I insisted, my voice rising slightly. "This isn't funny anymore. We need to find him." My chest constricted with fear as I thought of all the stories we'd heard about this place, the tales of spirits that roamed the cemetery, searching for something lost or someone to keep them company. What if Alex had encountered one of them? As we began to retrace our steps, I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't just the cold night air. It was something else, a presence that seemed to lurk just out of sight, watching us. I shivered and glanced over at Ryan, who was still scanning the area, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Do you hear that?" Ryan stopped suddenly, tilting his head to the side. The soft, melancholic music that had been playing in the background was growing louder, echoing through the gravestones like a siren's call. It was beautiful but utterly terrifying. "Yeah," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's coming from over there." I pointed toward a cluster of old, crumbling headstones, their inscriptions worn by time. The melody seemed to emanate from that direction, wrapping around us like an invisible thread, pulling us closer. "Should we check it out?" Ryan asked, a hint of trepidation in his voice. I nodded, though my stomach churned with anxiety. "We have to. We can't leave Alex behind." As we approached, the music grew more intense, each note resonating with an unsettling energy. I could feel the ground beneath my feet vibrate, as if the very earth was responding to the melody. "This is so messed up," I muttered, glancing at Ryan, who looked equally disturbed. We reached a particularly old tombstone, its surface covered in moss and lichen. I crouched down to examine it, my fingers brushing over the inscriptions. "This one looks ancient," I said, trying to distract myself from the rising tension. "I wonder who's buried here. Does it matter?" Ryan replied, his voice tense. "All that matters is finding Alex." Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the cemetery, making me shiver. The music shifted, a haunting lilt that seemed to weave through the air and into my very bones. "It's almost like it's alive," I whispered, my eyes wide with fear. "Yeah, well, if it is, it's not friendly," Ryan retorted, glancing around nervously. "We need to get out of here." As if in response to his words, the music intensified, wrapping around us like a thick fog. It felt almost as if the shadows were reaching for us, pulling us deeper into the cemetery's embrace. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts, but the melody was hypnotic, drowning out my rational mind. "Look!" Ryan exclaimed suddenly, pointing toward a nearby grave. "There's something over there." I followed his gaze and saw what appeared to be an old diary, half buried in the dirt near a crumbling headstone. My heart raced as I approached, reaching down to pull it free. The leather cover was cracked and weathered, but I could still make out the initials engraved on the front. "Do you think it's Alex's?" I asked, a sense of dread washing over me as I opened the diary. The pages were yellowed and crinkled, filled with hurried, scrawled handwriting. I skimmed through the entries, my fingers trembling slightly. "Here," I said, reading aloud. "He writes about a melody that haunts the cemetery every Halloween. Says it's a trap for lost souls, a way to lure them in." Ryan's face paled. "What do you mean, a trap?" I flipped to another page, my heart racing as I continued reading. "It says here that the melody was created by a musician who died in this cemetery. He was searching for something, or someone, and now, every year on Halloween, he uses his music to draw in the living, to keep them company in death." My voice faltered as I processed the implications of what I was reading. It says the only way to break the spell is to confront the musician and confess your darkest secret. That sounds like a load of crap, Ryan scoffed, but I could see the fear flickering in his eyes. "We should just keep looking for Alex and get out of here. This place is messed up." I closed the diary, my mind racing. But what if the only way to save him is to do what it says? What if we have to confront whatever's behind this? "Are you serious?" Ryan shot back, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You want to stick around and play ghost therapist?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "What if it's true, Ryan? What if Alex is in danger, and the only way to save him is to face this thing head-on?" He hesitated, glancing around nervously as the shadows shifted around us. "Fine, but if anything goes wrong, I'm out of here." With a nod, I turned back to the diary, my heart pounding as I tried to recall my own deepest fears. I had never been one to share my secrets, my vulnerabilities. But if it meant saving my friend, I knew I had to try. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's find that musician and confront whatever this is." Together, as we stood there, the music crescendoed, weaving around us like a living thing. I could feel the shadows closing in and the weight of the past pressing down on us. Whatever was coming, we had to face it together. "Let's go," Ryan said, steeling himself as he took a step forward. I followed, my heart racing, determined to uncover the truth and save our friend before it was too late. The chilling wind swept through the cemetery as we stood huddled together, the oppressive darkness pressing in on us. The air was thick with tension, and an unsettling silence enveloped the graveyard, broken only by the distant echoes of our racing hearts. I could feel the weight of the moment hanging heavy, a palpable fear that wrapped around us like a shroud. Okay, let's just clear the air for a second," Ryan began, his voice shaky but attempting to sound nonchalant. "I mean, we're all friends here, right? There's no reason to freak out. I could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the flicker of doubt that betrayed his bravado. Freak out? Are you kidding me? I snapped, my own voice rising slightly. We just heard a ghostly melody, and Alex is missing. We're in a freaking cemetery. Samantha's gaze darted between us, her expression a mix of fear and something deeper, something that made my stomach knot. Guys, we need to focus. We can't let this place get to us, she said, her voice steadying despite the quiver in her hands. We need to find Alex. Yeah, but how? I shot back, frustration boiling beneath the surface. What if he's really gone? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't shake the image of Alex disappearing into the shadows, swallowed whole by the darkness. Ryan took a deep breath, trying to regain some semblance of control. Let's think about this logically. He couldn't have gone far. We just need to call out to him. Call out to him? I interrupted, my voice rising again. What if he can't hear us? What if something got to him? I realized I was spiraling, but the fear gnawed at me, and I needed to vent it somehow. Guys, listen, Samantha interjected, her tone sharper than I had ever heard it. We can't let panic take over. We need to remember why we're here. We need to face this together. I looked at her, the flickering light of our lantern casting shadows on her face, and for a moment, I saw the determination in her eyes. You're right. We can't let fear control us. Ryan nodded, his expression softening. Okay, so let's start retracing our steps. Maybe he went back to the entrance. We can call out for him there. We began to move cautiously, the sound of our footsteps crunching on the gravel echoing through the otherwise silent graveyard. As we walked, I felt a creeping sense of dread crawling up my spine. What if that music was more than just a trick? I murmured, half to myself. What if it really is a trap? Samantha stopped, turning to face me, her brow furrowed with concern. You believe in that legend, don't you? About the musician capturing souls? I shrugged, not wanting to admit how much it unnerved me. It's just a story, right? But then again, this whole night feels like a nightmare we can't wake up from. Suddenly, Ryan spoke up, his voice low and serious. You know, I've been thinking, the music, it felt personal, like it was trying to reach us in some way. Maybe it's connected to something deeper, something we can't quite grasp. What do you mean? I asked, my curiosity piqued despite the fear that gripped my heart. Think about it. Each of us has our own burdens, our own truths we hide. Maybe the music is trying to expose those truths, to draw us out. He glanced at Samantha, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. It's like it knows our secrets. I felt a cold shiver run through me, and I turned to Samantha. What about you? What's your truth? Her expression shifted, vulnerability flickering across her features. I don't know if now's the time, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Come on, Sam, I urged, desperation creeping into my tone. We need to be honest with each other. Whatever it is, we can handle it together. Samantha hesitated, glancing around the cemetery as if searching for an escape. It's just, I feel so guilty about everything that happened with Jamie. Her voice trembled slightly, and I could see the pain etched across her face. Jamie? I echoed, the name striking a chord deep within me. You mean your friend who died in that car accident? She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I should have been there. I was supposed to go with him that night, but I bailed at the last minute. If I had been with him, maybe he'd still be here. Sam, that's not your fault, I asserted gently, stepping closer to her. You can't blame yourself for what happened. It was an accident. But it doesn't feel that way, she replied, her voice cracking. Every time I close my eyes, I see the crash. I hear the screeching tires and the impact. I could have saved him. Ryan stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. We all carry our burdens, Sam, but you need to let go of that weight. It's not healthy to carry guilt like this. I watched her struggle with the emotions swirling within her, and I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the moment felt too heavy for mere words. Just then, the music around us shifted, suddenly stopping, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The stillness was deafening, and I could feel my heart race as the tension in the air thickened. "What was that?" I whispered, glancing around nervously. It felt like the calm before a storm, an ominous sign that something was about to happen. Before any of us could speak, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the cemetery, cutting through the silence like a knife. It was a sound filled with anguish, and it sent chills racing down my spine. "Did you hear that?" I gasped, my voice trembling. "Yeah, what was that?" Ryan's eyes widened, and I could see the color drain from his face. Samantha stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror. "We need to get out of here, now," she cried, her voice rising in panic. But before we could turn to run, I felt a strange pull, an almost magnetic force keeping me rooted to the spot. "Wait," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if that scream was Alex?" "No," Ryan shook his head, his expression grim. "We can't think like that. We have to be rational. We need to find him, not let fear take us." I felt a surge of anger mixed with fear as I struggled against the invisible bond that seemed to hold me in place. How can you think rationally when we're in a place like this? This isn't just some haunted house. This is real. Samantha's face twisted in anguish, her voice quaking as she spoke. "It's like the music is feeding off our fears, our regrets. It's trying to draw us in, to trap us just like it did to Alex." As her words sank in, I realized the truth in them. The darkness around us wasn't just an absence of light. It was a living entity, feeding on our insecurities and emotions. "We need to confront what we're feeling," I said finally, my heart racing. "If we're going to save Alex, we can't let this place control us." Ryan nodded, determination washing over his features. "We can't let our fears and regrets bind us. We need to be brave." But as I looked back at Samantha, I could see the storm brewing within her. "I can't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't face it. I can't face what I did." "Sam," I said gently, stepping toward her. You have to let it out. It's the only way we can break free." Tears streamed down her cheeks, and in that moment, I saw the weight of her grief and guilt. "I don't want to be the reason someone else gets hurt. I don't want to lose anyone else." "Then let it go," I urged, my heart aching for her. "You're not alone. We're here for you." But just as she began to speak, the shadows surrounding us shifted, drawing closer as if to consume us entirely. The darkness pulsed with energy, and I could feel the weight of our secrets pressing down on us, threatening to crush us under its weight. Samantha took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Okay, I'll try to face it." But just as she spoke, the haunting melody returned, rising in intensity, wrapping around us like a serpent ready to strike. And with it came the unmistakable feeling that we were running out of time. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding as we stood at the edge of the cemetery, the moonlight casting eerie shadows that danced among the gravestones. My heart raced, not just from the chill of the night, but from the palpable tension that hung over us. I glanced at Samantha, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear, while Ryan fidgeted nervously beside her. We had come here to confront our fears, but now that we were here, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. "Is everyone ready?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. My voice echoed slightly, swallowed by the silence that enveloped the cemetery. "Ready as I'll ever be," Ryan muttered, though his eyes darted around, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Samantha took a deep breath, her resolve shining through. "Let's just find the source of that music and get out of here. It's probably just a prank." As we stepped deeper into the cemetery, the atmosphere shifted. The faint sound of music hung in the air, a haunting melody that pulled at something deep within me. It was soft at first, almost comforting, but as we walked, it grew louder, more insistent. I felt a strange compulsion to follow it, like a moth drawn to a flame. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, it's coming from over there." Samantha pointed toward a cluster of ancient tombstones, their surfaces worn and cracked with age. "Let's check it out." We approached cautiously, the shadows seeming to stretch and sway around us. The music swirled like a ghostly presence, wrapping around us, filling the air with an almost tangible weight. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat syncing with the rhythm of the melody. Maybe it's some kind of Halloween attraction, Ryan suggested, though his voice trembled slightly. To scare people away. Could be a prank. Or it could be something much worse, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We should be careful. As we drew closer, I noticed that the music seemed to resonate from a particularly old gravestone, its surface adorned with intricate carvings and a name that had long since faded. Samantha reached out a hand, her fingers brushing against the cool stone. The moment she touched it, the melody intensified, filling the air with an almost overwhelming energy. A shiver raced down my spine, and I instinctively stepped back. Samantha, maybe we should... Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled. I stumbled, glancing at Ryan, who looked equally alarmed. "What the hell was that?" he exclaimed, his voice rising in pitch. "I don't know," I shouted back, my heart racing. The shadows around us thickened, swirling like a dark mist. "We need to get out of here." But before we could react, Samantha gasped, her eyes widening. "Look!" she cried, pointing behind us. I turned, my breath catching in my throat as I saw a figure emerging from the darkness. A ghostly apparition that flickered in and out of existence, its form ethereal and haunting. "Is that?" Ryan began, his voice trailing off in disbelief. "It can't be real," I murmured, my mind racing. The figure seemed to call out to us, its mouth moving in a silent plea, and I felt a wave of cold wash over me. Samantha took a hesitant step forward, drawn to the apparition. "We need to help it," she urged, her voice shaking. "Maybe it's trying to tell us something." "No, we need to leave," I protested, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. "This isn't safe." Ryan looked between us, his expression torn. "What if it's linked to the music? We have to find out what's going on." The music swelled again, more powerful than before, and I felt the ground shake beneath us. The shadows closed in, the air thick with a sense of dread. "We're not alone," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. Samantha's face paled, and she looked around frantically. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice rising in panic. "Let's find the source of the music," Ryan suggested, his voice steadying as he took a deep breath. "We can figure this out together. We can't let fear control us." I nodded, though doubt gnawed at me. We had come here to confront our fears, but now it felt like we were stepping into a trap. Still, I didn't want to show weakness in front of my friends. "Okay, let's stick together. No one gets left behind." We moved deeper into the cemetery, the music guiding us like a siren's call. Each step felt heavier, as if the very ground was reluctant to let us pass. As we ventured further, I could feel the shadows creeping closer, whispering secrets that sent chills down my spine. "Do you guys feel that?" I asked, glancing at Samantha and Ryan. "It's like something's watching us." "Yeah, it's definitely getting creepier," Ryan admitted, his usual bravado fading. "We need to hurry." As we approached a dilapidated mausoleum, the music reached a fever pitch, echoing around us with an otherworldly resonance. It felt as if it were alive, thrumming in time with the chaotic rhythm of my heart. I hesitated at the entrance, the darkness within seeming to swallow the light. "I don't know about this," I said, my voice faltering. "What if there's something in there?" "We have to find out," Samantha insisted, her eyes shining with determination. "We can't let whatever this is keep us trapped in here." With a shared nod, we stepped inside, the air heavy and stale. The music reverberated off the cold stone walls, creating a haunting symphony that enveloped us. I could feel the shadows pressing in, and an unsettling sensation crawled over my skin, as if the very essence of the place was trying to seep into my soul. "Look!" Ryan exclaimed, pointing to a dusty old piano tucked away in the corner. The keys, yellowed with age, seemed to pulse with the melody that filled the air. "Maybe if we play it, we can stop this." "Are you crazy?" I shot back, feeling a surge of panic. What if it makes things worse? We won't know unless we try, he argued, stepping toward the piano. Samantha hesitated, but then she joined him, an intensity in her gaze. We have to do something, or we'll be trapped here forever. With a reluctant sigh, I followed, my heart pounding in my chest. As Ryan sat at the piano, his fingers hovering above the keys, I felt a strange compulsion to join them. It was as if the music was pulling at something deep within me, urging me to play along. Okay, but let's be careful, I said, my voice shaking slightly. We don't know what this could unleash. Ryan pressed down on a key, and the sound reverberated through the mausoleum, sending a shiver down my spine. The music shifted, transforming into a haunting melody that felt both beautiful and sorrowful. I could see Samantha closing her eyes, lost in the moment, while I struggled to focus on anything other than the shadows lurking just beyond the light. What if we're waking something up? I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. We have to face it, Ryan replied, his fingers dancing across the keys. It's the only way to break the hold this place has on us. Just then, the shadows flared up, swirling around us like a tempest. I felt a rush of fear, and instinctively, I grabbed Samantha's hand. We need to stop. But as if in response to my words, the music surged, overpowering my thoughts. It felt like a force beyond our control was compelling us to dance, to move with the rhythm that echoed through the mausoleum. I tried to resist, but my body felt heavy, as if the shadows were wrapping around me, pulling me deeper into their grasp. Fight it, Ryan shouted, though his voice was barely audible above the cacophony. I looked at Samantha, her face a mask of determination, and I realized we were all trapped in this dance, this haunting, beautiful prison. With every note, I could feel our fears manifesting around us, taking form in the shadows that flickered at the edges of our vision. Don't give in, I yelled, my voice breaking through the melody. We have to break free. But the music seemed to respond to our struggle, intensifying as if it thrived on our fear and desperation. I felt the shadows closing in, their whispers growing louder, taunting us with our innermost fears. Together, Samantha shouted, her voice cutting through the darkness. We can do this together. We joined hands, forming a circle around the piano. As we focused on each other, I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. The shadows paused, momentarily retreating as we united our strength. Let's face this, I urged, my voice steadying. We can't let this music control us. As we closed our eyes, I felt the weight of our fears pressing down, but I also felt the warmth of our friendship surrounding us. The music faltered, hesitating as we stood firm against the darkness that sought to consume us. It was then that I realized the power we held, together. The shadows as the haunting melody wrapped around us like a cold shroud. I could feel the weight of the night pressing down on my chest. The air was thick with tension, and shadows danced mockingly in the pale moonlight. I turned to Samantha and Ryan, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. We need to break free from this, I said, my voice barely a whisper, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence of the cemetery. Ryan, his eyes darting nervously, nodded in agreement. Yeah, but how? That music. It feels like it's pulling us in deeper. He glanced around, as if the very shadows could hear him. We can't let it control us. Samantha, usually the brave one, looked shaken. We have to find the source of it. It's the only way to escape. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of determination behind her fear. We can't let it take any more of us. Taking a deep breath, I tried to steady myself. Let's stick together. We faced worse, right? We just need to find that grave or whatever it is. As I spoke, I felt a surge of resolve. We might be scared, but we were in this together. We can do this. With a shaky nod, we turned toward the deeper part of the cemetery, the shadows growing thicker as we ventured further from the entrance. Each step felt like a challenge, the ground beneath us shifting as if it were alive, reacting to our presence. The music grew louder, each note like a taunt, a reminder of our dread. Suddenly, I stumbled, catching myself against a cold gravestone. "Watch out for the—" I began, but the words died in my throat. The shadows around us began to shift, twisting into forms that echoed our deepest fears. I looked at Ryan, who was frozen in place, his eyes wide with terror. "Ryan, move!" I shouted, pulling him back as I felt something brush against my leg. "I can't," he cried, his voice strained. "It's like they're holding me down." Samantha stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos. "You have to fight it. Remember who you are." She turned to me, her gaze fierce. "Alex, you two, don't let them win." I thought of my dreams, the weight of my ambitions, and the fear of failure. Visions of a bleak future flickered before my eyes. Me, alone, surrounded by the echoes of my unfulfilled potential. "No!" I shouted, shaking my head violently, dispelling the images. "I won't let this happen." The music swelled, more powerful than before, and I felt an invisible force pulling at my limbs, urging me to join the macabre dance. It was as if the melody had a life of its own, whispering dark promises of acceptance and belonging. But I refused to give in. "We can't let it take us," I yelled, my voice rising above the cacophony. Ryan shook his head, as if waking from a trance. "You're right. We need to stay strong." With a newfound determination, he stepped closer to Samantha and me, forming a circle of resilience against the encroaching shadows. "Together, we can fight this." The ground shuddered beneath us, a low rumble that echoed the depths of our fears. I felt the shadows pressing in, their cold tendrils reaching out, trying to wrap around my heart. "We need to focus," I shouted. "We can't let them distract us." "Okay," Samantha said, her voice strong. "Let's think about what we know. The music, it's tied to this place. There has to be something here that connects us to it." She glanced around, her eyes searching for answers in the darkness. "What did we find earlier? The diary?" "Yes," I exclaimed, remembering the chilling words we had read. "The melody is a trap for restless souls. If we can find out how to break it, we might have a chance." My heart raced as I thought about the implications. "We need to recall everything from that diary." Ryan nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "The more we understand, the better our chances of finding a way out." He glanced around, the shadows still swirling ominously. "But we need to hurry. I can feel the darkness closing in." Samantha stepped forward, her voice resolute. "Let's head to the center of the cemetery. That's where the energy feels the strongest. Maybe that's where we'll find the answers." With a shared nod, we began to move, the three of us forming a tight-knit group against the encroaching darkness. As we walked, the shadows seemed to whisper, their voices a soft symphony that echoed in our minds. My heart raced as I fought against the urge to listen, to give in to the seductive melody that promised solace from our fears. "Stay focused," I urged, my voice steady. "Don't let it get to you." With each step, we could feel the music resonating through the ground, a heartbeat of despair that pulsed beneath our feet. I could see the central graveyard up ahead, the moonlight illuminating a solitary stone that seemed to beckon us closer. "That's it," I pointed, hope flooding my chest. "We need to get there." We picked up our pace, adrenaline driving us forward. As we reached the stone, I could feel the energy radiating from it, a tangible force that pulled at my very soul. The melody grew louder, each note vibrating through my bones. "This must be it," I gasped. Samantha stepped forward, her eyes wide with realization. "This is where it all began." The diary mentioned a connection to a musician who died here. "His spirit is trapped, and we need to free him." She looked at me, her expression serious. "We have to confess our truths. It's the only way to break the curse." "But what if it doesn't work?" Ryan asked, fear creeping into his voice. "What if we end up like Alex?" I placed a hand on his shoulder, meeting his gaze. "We have to trust each other. We've already come this far. We can't turn back now." I took a deep breath, the weight of our situation pressing down on me. "We can do this together, Samantha stepped closer to the grave, her expression contemplative. "I'll go first," she said, determination etched across her face. "I need to face my guilt." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. I've carried this burden for too long. I feel responsible for my friend's death. I was driving the car when the accident happened. I should have been more careful." As her confession hung in the air, the shadows seemed to recoil, the music faltering for a moment. I felt a flicker of hope, but it quickly faded as the shadows surged forward, reacting to her vulnerability. "Keep going, Samantha," I urged. I was so consumed by my own fears that I forgot to live. She continued, her voice gaining strength. "I should have been there for him. I should have warned him." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but there was a lightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I want to break this cycle. I want to free him." As she spoke, the music began to shift, the notes becoming softer, more melancholic. The shadows seemed to pause, caught in the web of her confession. "It's working," I whispered, my heart racing. Ryan stepped forward, his expression resolute. "I can't hold back anymore either. I've been afraid to tell you how I feel." He looked directly at Samantha, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. "I love you, and it's terrified me. I thought I would ruin our friendship by confessing, but I can't keep it inside any longer. I need you to know." Samantha's eyes widened, surprise mixing with sorrow. "Ryan," before she could finish, I felt a surge of energy course through me, pushing me toward the grave. "I can't hold back either," I exclaimed, my voice rising above the chaos. "I've always been scared of not living up to expectations. I put so much pressure on myself to succeed that I forgot what it means to be happy." The shadows writhed around me, a dark symphony responding to my raw honesty. "I want to break free from that fear." As my confession echoed through the cemetery, the music shifted once more, notes intertwining with the energy of our truths. The shadows began to retreat, their hold on us weakening as we stood united in our vulnerability. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," I shouted, the words bursting forth from my heart. "I want to live. I want to be free." In that moment, a wave of energy surged through the air, and the shadows howled in protest. The music began to shift, transforming from a haunting melody to a gentle lullaby. The atmosphere around us grew lighter, the oppressive heaviness lifting as the darkness receded. As we stood together, the power of our confessions resonated through the air, creating a protective barrier against the shadows that had tormented us. I looked at Samantha and Ryan, their faces a mix of relief and determination. "We did it," I breathed, hope blossoming within me. But just as we thought we had broken free, I felt a chilling breeze sweep through the cemetery, and the shadows began to swirl once more. It wasn't over yet. The moment Samantha's confession echoed through the stillness of the cemetery, a strange stillness enveloped us. The air thickened, charged with a palpable energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. My heart raced as I glanced at Samantha. Her face was pale, sweat beading on her forehead. I could see the shadows flickering at the edges of my vision, dark tendrils creeping closer, almost as if they were drawn to her vulnerability. "Alex!" I shouted, panic rising in my throat. "Where did he go?" "Over there." Samantha pointed, her voice trembling as she squinted into the darkness. The shadows were swirling, and a low, haunting melody began to rise again, wrapping around us like a noose. It was a melody filled with sorrow, a sound that felt like it was pulling at the very essence of our being. "Alex!" I called again, but the only answer I received was the eerie echo of my own voice, bouncing off the headstones. The shadows shifted, and suddenly, without warning, they coalesced into a vortex, swirling violently in the air. "This isn't happening," I muttered under my breath, trying to convince myself that I hadn't just seen my best friend disappear into a whirlwind of darkness. "We have to get him back. We can't just stand here," Samantha shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony of whispers that surrounded us. "We need to find him." Before I could respond, the ground shook beneath our feet, and I stumbled, grabbing onto a nearby gravestone for support. The sensation was like being on a ship in a storm, and I felt the weight of dread settle heavily in my stomach. "Ryan, look!" Samantha pointed again, her eyes wide with terror. I followed her gaze and saw a faint, flickering light in the distance, like a candle in the dark. "Maybe it's a way out," I suggested, desperate to find a glimmer of hope. "Let's go." We started moving toward the light, but the shadows seemed to reach out, brushing against our skin as we passed. I shivered, feeling a chill pierce through my bones. "This place is cursed," I whispered, glancing nervously over my shoulder. As we approached the light, it grew brighter, illuminating a small clearing surrounded by ancient trees. In the center stood a large, weathered gravestone, the inscription barely legible. The light pulsed with an almost hypnotic rhythm, synchronized with the haunting melody that filled the air. I think this is where it's coming from," Samantha said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then we need to stop it," I replied, my determination hardening. "We have to break whatever hold this place has on us." We stepped into the clearing, and as we did, the music intensified, wrapping around us like a warm blanket, even as I could sense the danger lurking just beneath the surface. I could feel the shadows pressing in, and I knew they were waiting for us to falter. "Do you feel that?" Samantha asked, her eyes darting around. "Yeah, it's like they're watching us," I admitted, fear creeping back into my voice. Suddenly, the music shifted, morphing into a sorrowful lament that resonated through my chest. It felt like a cry for help, and I couldn't help but feel its pull. "What do we do?" I asked, my mind racing. Samantha knelt by the gravestone, brushing away the dirt to reveal more of the inscription. It says, "Here lies the soul of the forgotten musician, lost to time, seeking companionship in the shadows." Her voice trembled as she read the words aloud. "Companionship?" I echoed, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "Is that what this is about? He's trying to take us?" "I think so," she said, her eyes widening. "He wants to keep us here, to join him in whatever torment he's experiencing." The shadows flickered again, and I could hear them whispering, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of anguish. "We can't let that happen," I said, clenching my fists. "We need to confront this, to face our fears." As if in response, the shadows surged forward, coiling around us like snakes. I felt a sudden wave of despair wash over me, and for a moment, the world around me blurred. Visions began to flood my mind, my life spiraling out of control, dreams turned to ash, loneliness settling deep within my heart. "Ryan, no!" Samantha shouted, pulling me back to reality. "Don't give in." I can't help it," I stammered as the shadows pressed closer, their whispers growing louder, drowning out my thoughts. "It's too much. Focus. Ryan, remember why we're here," she urged, her voice cutting through the fog in my mind. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the present. "We're here for Alex," I reminded myself, trying to shake off the oppressive weight of the shadows. "We have to break this cycle." Samantha's face was determined, and I could see the fire in her eyes. "Let's tell him our truths. Maybe that's what we have to do to break the hold he has on us." I nodded, and as I looked into her eyes, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Okay, let's do it together." We took a step forward, standing at the base of the gravestone. The shadows writhed around us, but instead of fear, I felt a strange sense of clarity. "I'll go first," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've been afraid to admit I'm terrified of failing. I'm scared that I'll never be enough for anyone." The shadows paused, and I could feel a shift in the air. "Your turn," I urged Samantha, squeezing her hand tightly. "Okay," she said, her voice shaky. "I've been holding on to guilt for so long. I couldn't save him, and I've blamed myself every day since that accident." The shadows trembled, and I felt an echo of their pain. "We're not alone in this," I said, my voice stronger now. "We've all been through our own hells, but we can't let it consume us. Together, we can break free," Samantha declared, her confidence radiating from her. As we continued to speak our truths, the shadows recoiled, as if in pain. The melody began to shift again, transforming from a sorrowful lament into something more chaotic and angry. I could feel the ground vibrating beneath us, and the air crackled with energy. "Keep going," I urged Samantha, my voice rising above the chaos. "We have to push through." "I'm afraid of being alone," she admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm terrified that no one will understand me, that I'll always be left behind." With every confession, the shadows writhed, and the music shifted, becoming more frantic. I could feel the weight of our fears bearing down on us, but I also felt a sense of liberation. "Let's not just share our fears," I said, a new idea forming in my mind. "Let's share our hopes, too." Samantha nodded, her face lighting up with determination. I hope to find peace. I hope to forgive myself for what happened. I hope to find my path," I added, feeling a surge of courage. "I hope to become the person I'm meant to be, not define myself by my failures." As we spoke, the shadows began to waver, flickering like a candle in the wind. The music swelled, no longer a haunting lament, but a powerful symphony of our truths. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the gravestone, illuminating the clearing. The shadows screamed, their anguished cries echoing through the night. "Ryan! Samantha!" A voice called out, and I turned to see Alex's figure emerging from the darkness, his face contorted in pain. "Alex!" I shouted, my heart leaping with hope. But the shadows surged forward, and I could see them reaching for him, clutching at his limbs like a desperate tide. "Help me!" he cried, his voice filled with terror. "No!" I shouted, instinctively stepping forward. "We're coming for you." But as I moved, the shadows twisted around me, pulling me back. "You must stay," they hissed, their voices a blend of sorrow and rage. "Ryan, no!" Samantha screamed, reaching out for me. I could see the fear in her eyes, and I felt it mirrored in my own heart. "We can't let them take you," I yelled back, fighting against the shadows that were clawing at my soul. "Together," Samantha shouted, her voice cutting through the darkness. "We can break free." With all my strength, I focused on the light emanating from the gravestone. "We won't let the darkness win," I declared, my voice rising above the chaos. "We are stronger than our fears." The shadows recoiled, their grip loosening as we stood together, united in our determination. With one final push, we released our fears and embraced our hopes, the light growing brighter around us. "Alex, hold on," I cried, reaching out for him. The shadows screamed in fury, but their hold was weakening. I could feel the air was thick with tension as Samantha and I stood in the center of the cemetery, the moonlight casting eerie shadows around us. The haunting melody reverberated through the ground beneath our feet, a relentless reminder of the malevolent force that had ensnared our friend, Alex. I could feel my heart racing, a drumbeat of fear and determination. We had to confront the past. We had to break the cycle of this cursed song. "Samantha," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady, "we need to face what happened. It's the only way to save Alex." She looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, the weight of her guilt evident on her face. "But what if facing it is too much? What if we can't handle it?" I took a deep breath, memories of our shared history flooding my mind. We had been through so much together, and yet this felt like the darkest moment of our lives. "We have to try. For Alex, he's counting on us." The shadows around us seemed to pulse with our emotions, as if they were alive, feeding off our fear and uncertainty. The music swelled, more aggressive now, urging us to dance, to submit to its power. I felt a chill run down my spine, a voice whispering in my ear that we were running out of time. "Let's find the source of this song," I urged, taking her hand. "It has to be here somewhere." As we moved deeper into the cemetery, the ground felt uneven beneath our feet, as if it was shifting, alive with the memories of those buried here. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, an olfactory reminder of the finality of death. I can't believe we're doing this, Samantha said, her voice wavering. What if we find something we're not ready to face? I stopped, turning to her. What if we don't? What if we just let this music consume us? We can't let it win. She nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. Okay, let's do this. We pressed on, the melody twisting around us like a serpent, constricting our thoughts and clouding my judgment. And then we found it. A grand, ancient tombstone that loomed before us, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with energy. The music was loudest here, resonating with an intensity that made my heart race. This must be it, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Samantha stepped closer, tracing her fingers over the carvings. Do you think the music is coming from here? I think it's tied to whatever happened here. We need to uncover the truth, I replied, feeling a rush of adrenaline. As we gathered our courage, I felt a surge of vulnerability wash over me. Samantha, before we go any further, I need to tell you something. She turned to me, concern etched on her face. What is it? I've been holding back. I've always cared about you, more than just as a friend. I never had the courage to say it until now. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the world around us faded. Ryan, before she could finish, the music shifted, a deep, resonant chord that vibrated through my bones. It was as if the cemetery itself was responding to our confessions, amplifying our fears. We don't have time for this, I said, urgency creeping into my voice. We need to break this spell. Samantha nodded, her expression serious. You're right. Let's focus on the truth. We placed our hands on the tombstone, feeling a strange warmth emanating from the stone. The melody danced around us, almost beckoning us to join in its tragic embrace. I closed my eyes, trying to center my thoughts, to focus on the pain we had both been carrying. Think about what haunts you, I urged, hoping to draw out the source of our fears. We can't let it control us. Samantha's breath hitched as she began to speak. It was my fault, the accident. I should have been there. I should have stopped him. I felt a pang in my heart, knowing how much she had blamed herself for her friend's death. You can't carry that burden alone, Sam. It wasn't your fault. Accidents happen, but I was supposed to be there. I could have saved him, she cried, her voice trembling. The shadows around us writhed in response, and the music swelled, a cacophony of sorrow that threatened to drown us. I squeezed her hand, grounding her. You have to let it go. Speak your truth, and let the music hear you. Taking a deep breath, she continued, I've been afraid to move on. I thought if I held onto this guilt, it would somehow keep his memory alive. But it's just suffocating me. As she spoke, the ground trembled beneath us, and the shadows flickered, as if reacting to her confession. I could feel the energy shifting, and I knew we were on the brink of something monumental. It's okay to let go, Samantha, I encouraged her. His memory will always be with you, but you don't have to suffer like this. With a trembling voice, she said, I'm sorry, Jason. I'm so sorry. The moment the name escaped her lips, the music faltered. A moment of silence washed over us, and I could feel a change in the atmosphere. The shadows seemed to retreat, as if they were afraid of her honesty. But then, the melody surged again, more powerful than before, echoing our deepest fears. It's not enough, I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. We need to both confess. I took a step forward, my heart racing. I've been scared too, Sam. Scared of losing you as a friend. Scared of never being enough. She looked at me, eyes wide. Ryan, I never wanted to lose you either. The shadows surged, and I felt their energy wrap around us, squeezing tighter. We have to be brave. We can't let this music win. I want to move forward, but I need to face my own truth. What is it, Ryan? She urged, concern etched on her face. I've always felt like I was in your shadow, I admitted, my voice trembling. I've tried to be the guy everyone looks up to, but inside, I'm terrified that I'll never measure up, that I'll always be just average. As the words left my mouth, The melody wavered again, the shadows recoiling slightly. I could feel Samantha's gaze piercing through me, understanding my vulnerability. "You're not average, Ryan. You're so much more than that," she said, her voice steady. "You've always been there for me. You've always cared." The energy around us shifted again, and I felt a glimmer of hope. "Then we both need to let our truths set us free." We took a deep breath together and placed our hands back on the tombstone. "We're ready," I declared, feeling the weight of our secrets begin to lift. The melody rose again, but this time it felt different, as if it was waiting for us to confront it. "Let's do this together," I said, looking into her eyes. "Together," she echoed, and we steeled ourselves for what was to come. As we began to recount our traumas, the music twisted and turned, morphing into something we could no longer ignore. "I lost a friend, and I couldn't save him," Samantha cried, her voice breaking. "I'm scared of being forgotten," I confessed, the shadows swirling around us, feeding on our pain and regret. But with each word, the shadows began to shrink, their hold on us weakening. The music shifted, almost pleading, as if it knew we were breaking free from its grasp. It was then that I felt it, a pulse of energy that surged through us, resonating with our confessions. The shadows were no longer the terrifying entities we had feared. They were echoes of our past, reminders of our struggles. The realization washed over me like a wave. "This isn't just a curse," I said, my voice growing stronger. "It's a reflection of us. Our pain, our fears, our regrets." The music crescendoed, a powerful symphony of our emotions. I could feel the weight of our confessions binding us together, creating a force that was impossible to ignore. Samantha looked at me, a spark of determination in her eyes. "We can't let it control us any longer. We need to reclaim our lives. Yes, we'll turn this melody into something beautiful," I shouted, the shadows swirling around us, their energy now a part of our own. With renewed strength, we let our voices rise, weaving our truths into the very fabric of the air. The music transformed, no longer a lament but a celebration of our survival. And as we stood in that graveyard, surrounded by the echoes of our past, we knew we were no longer alone. Together, we would face whatever came next. Together, we would break the cycle of the haunting melody and reclaim our lives. The shadows twisted and writhed around us, an eerie dance of darkness that chilled my bones. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as the ghostly figure took shape, its form becoming clearer as it rose from the depths of despair. My breath caught in my throat when I recognized the face. It was him, my old friend, the one I had lost in that terrible accident. He looked just as I remembered, yet there was something unsettlingly different about him. "Sam," he called out, his voice echoing through the cemetery like a haunting melody. "You came back for me." His eyes, once warm and inviting, now glowed with an otherworldly light, reflecting the pain and sorrow that had enveloped him since that fateful day. "No, this isn't right," I shouted, stepping back instinctively, my heart racing. "You're not him. You're just a shadow of what he was." Ryan's hand tightened around mine, and I could feel his warmth against the cold that surrounded us. "Samantha, we have to face this. He's the key to breaking the curse of the melody. We can't let him take you, and we can't let the music consume us." His eyes were filled with determination, but I could see the fear behind them. The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can escape? You think you can break the bond that ties us? One of you must stay with me to end the curse. It's the only way." I felt my stomach drop. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Someone had to stay behind? The thought made my head spin. I looked at Ryan, who met my gaze with a mixture of fear and resolve. "I won't let you go, Samantha. I won't let him take you too," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "You don't understand, Ryan. If one of us has to stay, it should be me. I'm the one who brought this upon us. I'm the reason we're here," I argued, my heart racing. "Samantha, no," he exclaimed, shaking his head vehemently. "You're not responsible for what happened. We were all just kids, and it was an accident." You can't carry that burden forever. The figure stepped closer, his presence suffocating. Choose, Samantha. Choose who will remain with me forever, or face the consequences of your inaction. I could feel the weight of my past pressing down on me, the guilt that had haunted me since the day I lost him. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the memories of that day. The screeching tires, the explosion of glass, the scream that had escaped my lips. I had been there, and I had survived while he had not. I can't do this, I cried out, my voice trembling. Yes, you can, Ryan said firmly. You can't let your past control you anymore. We need to be brave, together. But the figure smiled, a cruel twist of his lips. Bravery is irrelevant. You must choose, or I will take you both. In that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, a tremor that resonated through the air. The melody grew louder, a chorus of despair that seemed to wrap around us like a shroud. I could feel Ryan's grip tightening around my hand. Sam, listen to me, he said urgently. His eyes locked onto mine. You have to let go of your guilt. It's not your fault. You're not to blame for what happened. We can confront this together. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I can't live with this guilt any longer. It's suffocating me. Then let it go. Let it all go, he urged. His voice filled with an intensity that pierced through my despair. We can do this together. We can break free. The figure stepped back, his expression shifting to one of impatience. Time is running out. Choose. I looked between Ryan and the ghostly figure, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I couldn't bear the thought of losing Ryan, but I also couldn't let my past consume me any longer. Please, Samantha, Ryan pleaded, his voice trembling with emotion. Don't let him take you. You're stronger than this. We can fight it. The shadows flickered around us, and for a moment, I could see the faces of all my friends, the laughter we had shared, the memories we had built. And then there was that day, the day that had changed everything. I felt the memories crashing over me like a tidal wave, and I gasped, clutching Ryan's hand tighter. I love you, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the cacophony of the music. What? He asked, his eyes widening in surprise. I love you, Ryan. I've always loved you, I confessed, feeling the weight of my admission lift slightly. He looked at me, astonished, but before he could respond, the shadows surged forward, enveloping him in a dark embrace. No! I screamed, trying to pull him back, but the darkness was too powerful. Ryan! I cried, watching in horror as he was dragged deeper into the shadows, his face a mask of determination and fear. I won't let you take her, he shouted, struggling against the grip of the darkness. Sam, you have to fight. You have to let him go. The figure smiled, his eyes shining with triumph. You see, it's already begun. One will stay to break the curse, and one will remain forever lost. In that moment, I felt a surge of anger and defiance rise within me. No, I won't let you take him. I won't let you win, I shouted, my voice rising above the haunting melody. You think you can defy me? The figure sneered, his form twisting and distorting in the shadows. You have no power here, but I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. You're wrong. We have each other, and that's more powerful than any darkness you can conjure. Ryan's hand reached out to me, and I grasped it tightly, feeling the warmth of his presence. Samantha, remember who you are. Remember your strength. The music swelled, and I could feel the energy building around us. I am not defined by my past, I shouted, my voice ringing with conviction. I am not your prisoner. The figure recoiled, his face twisting with rage. You will regret this defiance. But I stood my ground. I will not let you take him. In that moment, the shadows began to unravel, the darkness retreating as the melody transformed into a cacophony of shrieks and wails. I could feel the energy shifting, the power of our bond pushing back against the darkness. I love you, Ryan. Whatever happens, I will always love you, I yelled as the shadows began to dissolve. I love you too, Samantha, "We can do this together," he shouted, his voice filled with determination. The figure shrieked in rage, the shadows swirling around him in a chaotic frenzy. "You cannot escape your fate." But as the music reached a crescendo, I felt a surge of light breaking through the darkness. "We choose our fate," I yelled, and in that moment, everything changed. The shadows shattered like glass, and the light enveloped us, washing away the pain and fear. The music transformed into a beautiful melody, one filled with hope and love. And as the darkness faded, I felt Ryan's hand slip from mine, and I gasped, my heart aching. "No!" I cried, reaching out for him. But he smiled, a serene look on his face. "Samantha, this is the only way. I'll always be with you. Remember that." The last thing I saw was his face, illuminated by the light, and then he was gone. The shadows receded completely, and I was left standing in the cemetery, the haunting melody fading into silence. Tears streamed down my face as I realized what had happened. The curse was broken, but at a terrible cost. I had lost Ryan, and the weight of that loss settled heavily on my heart. But even in my grief, I could feel a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my past, and I had chosen love over despair. And as I stood there, alone in the quiet of the cemetery, I knew that Ryan would always be a part of me, his love echoing in my heart like a sweet melody that would never fade.